Hi, I'm here with Kevin deFreitas, FAIA Founding Principal of Kevin deFreitas Architects. As the principal of Kevin deFreitas Architects, Kevin has had a good fortune of many exceptional collaborations, resulting in a diverse portfolio of recognized projects, a public restroom on the sand in Ocean Beach, a rammed earth chapel on the Rincon Indian Reservation, urban infill row homes made of tilt-up concrete, wonderfully personal single-family residences, and numerous commissions on the UC San Diego campus, including the iconic Geisel Library. Kevin's innovative and thoughtful design work has been widely published and recognized for being rooted in a meaningful connection to place, the optimal selection of materials, common sense sustainability, and a strong visual presence. Kevin was honored with the National Young Architect Award by the American Institute and later inducted as a fellow. Kevin greatly enjoys live music, a meal with just about anybody, laughing out loud, and sharing stories, true or otherwise. Kevin, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of one of the podcasts for the Inspiration series for San Diego Design Week.
That's a great pleasure, Michelle. And we're friends.
And we're friends. So what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
Well, I think I'm going to have to go back a little bit to my origin story, if you'll indulge me.
Yes.
So my parents were both public school teachers, and they met at a small state teachers college in upstate New York. And they moved to Germany after my dad finished his Korean War service. And he taught at a military base, English. And my mom was raising my 4 older siblings. And they got a VW camper van, and they went all over Europe on the holidays, Easter and summer, and just had a really, really amazing adventure. And one of the families that befriended them and on the base where they lived was very interested in design and taught them about modern design. And they took them to see Mies's work and the Waisenhofsiedlung and the Bauhaus, and they became captivated by design, architecture and art.
And so were you weren't born yet?
I was not born yet.
Okay.
So they were there for almost 5 years, and they decided to leapfrog upstate New York and go to California. And so they moved to Anaheim and realized it was not at all what was portrayed in the movies. It was smoggy, it was strip malls, it was not super attractive, nor was it lush like upstate New York. And
oh my gosh.
So they were quite shocked. So my dad got a job teaching, and my mom was taking care of the kids. And my dad would go on a scouting trip almost every weekend. He would take the VW van and go up and down the coast looking for potential new places to live in California. And he would leave on a Friday after school and set up somewhere. He would camp out of the van and try and get some information, visually check out the places, addresses for the school districts, and then he would reach out. And there was so much growth in California in the early 60s that there was just opportunities everywhere for him. And so they eventually settled on San Diego, and they came down to Poway, and then they continued that process of looking for a place they really wanted to build. And they became enamored with architecture. And I think my dad's entire salary, annual salary while he was teaching on the base in Germany for the Defense Department, was $4,800 for the entire year. And their parting gift when they left, they bought 2 Mies Barcelona chairs and ottomans, and they spent $800 on both of them, which was a significant investment. And they had them their entire lives. My sister has one, and I have the other. And but it really was the ethos that they raised me with, which was to have fewer things but higher quality things that you really cared about and that were meaningful to you. And that was an important lesson to me about design. And so when you're talking about my earliest recollections of architecture, I didn't really have any. But it was a long, slow process. It was more this ethos that they raised us with. And we had Saarinen chairs and fewer pieces, but really beautiful. And so when they were living...
The chair's my favorite.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love furniture. I have a chair fetish. They did the same thing. When they were living in Poway, my dad would scout on the weekends looking for property because they really wanted to build a house. And they found a really beautiful parcel in Escondido, overlooking the Wild Animal Park, Sam Squaw Valley, up on the top. And they had the audacity to interview the 4 best mid-century architects, Homer Deloy, Sim Bruce Richards, Russell Forrester, and they couldn't afford any of them. One salary, 5 kids.
Yeah.
And they resonated most with Russell Forrester, and they proceeded to hire him, and they worked out a plan on payments. The house was quite modest, 2,400 square feet, shared bedrooms. It had 3 bathrooms. And he agreed to do it on payments, $100 a month for 5 years, which was extraordinary. And they built the house, and it was classic Russell Forrester. And Russell Forrester has a lot of renown as a mid-century architect. He was based out of La Jolla, credited with doing the first Jack in the Box and drive-through.
Oh, okay. We had one of those by our house. They tore it down.
Amongst other commissions. But this house was classic mid-century. Had T111 siding with these wing walls that went from the outside inside. The T111 came right in. Floor-to-ceiling glass. There was a window wall that was 40 feet long overlooking the valley. Flat roof, open plan. And it was just my house. And it was the only house I ever lived in. In fact, my brother lives there now with his family, and so I can call the phone number that I grew up with, and someone I know will pick up the phone and answer. And so,
it's still the same phone number.
Same phone number, everything. So when I graduated high school, and this is a very long answer to a very short question. I wanted to learn to ski, so I got a job up in Utah. And I had about 4 months from the end of school started till the season started. I was going to go up with my best friend at the time, Derek Price, and so I got a job with a friend from church. He was kind of the leader of the youth group, and he was a contractor. And he said, "I could probably teach you to sweep, so why don't you come be a laborer on this house that I'm building?" And it was overlooking the Samskull Valley, not even a half a mile from my house. And so it was amazing. The house was extraordinary. It was on this hillside, and hawks would soar above us, and we'd work without our shirts on and have nail gun fights. And it was just, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And then I kind of realized, he had some back issues. He was like, "Oh, I've fallen off the second story a couple of times, this and that." I'm like, "Yeah, it's true. You don't see too many old contractors." And they would laugh at me because when I would walk across the plates, I would straddle it, an inch along, and he would just run across like it was nothing. And so they nicknamed me El Gato, cat, because I was always afraid of falling. So it's pretty clear that
Cats
I wasn't.
always land on their feet.
Yes, and they knew I'd land on something else. And so one day, we were up on the roof, and there was about a half a mile approach, and this car's coming up. It's a convertible red vintage Mercedes, and the guy driving it had a Go Fast hat on backwards and like a white scarf. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's pretty uppity for Escondido. And I'm watching the car come up, and he gets out, and he's this really imposing figure, 6'4", 6'5", and he starts pointing around, and my boss starts jumping, like really responding. I'm like, that's the job for me. And so it turned out it was the architect coming out.
And who was it?
Rob Quigley.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
And it was the first time that I really was aware of architecture, even though looking back, I had had this lifelong conversation with Russell Forrester living in this house. And when my friends would come over to high school, they'd say, "Gosh, this house is so weird, floor to ceiling glass, and how long does it take to wash those?" And it's like there's no walls in here, and I just never really knew it was different.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like when you go to visit any friend, when you're like, "Oh, this is what they're going to have for dinner. This is how they eat," or "This is what they eat." It's like a totally different experience. But
it really was.
Yeah.
So working on this house, it had a big circle in the middle, and it had this trestle that took water from the jacuzzi out to the patio and dropped it into the lap pool down below. I mean, it was incredible. And it just like,
what
wow.
year was this?
This was 1985.
Yeah. See, so I started architecture school in 1982, and so there was like the first time that I ever saw Rob Quigley was probably 1983 because there was like this big exhibition at the Hoya Museum of Contemporary Art at the time. That was what it was called. But yeah. So it was all of those guys, right? Of course, they were all men.
I remember it was Brat City or Debutante or Brat City or something like that. But I remember the catalog for that. And so I did my years of skiing. I was in Utah. And then there were some people that came through from Australia and New Zealand, and they said, "Oh, come down and ski our season," because it was the flipped. And so I got back just a few days before school started. My mom, who at that time was a guidance counselor in high school, helped me get in. And so I did a year at USD, and I continued to work on the weekends with my friend that was a contractor. And it really started to inspire me, and I started to think about, the space that I grew up in and how meaningful that was, and a lot of the things that my parents tried to instill in me. And it kind of crystallized, and I thought, I'll go to architecture school. And so I went to my mom's office, and they had several bookshelves with all the college catalogs from A to Z. And I opened up the first one, and they didn't require a language or nor calculus. And it was the University of Arizona. I'm like, well, I can do that. So I said, I'll apply to one school, and if I get in, I'll go. And I got in and went from there, and ended up coming back and interning at Rob's office each of the 4 summers that I was in school.
Oh, okay.
And that was a pivotal moment for me. It really changed my whole perspective on kind of design, and I'm so thankful that I've had incredible mentorship. And I think one of the most remarkable things for me professionally, and maybe even personally, was that I just said yes to everything. And I didn't really know what the risks were or what the upsides were, but I was very open, and some amazing opportunities came my way, and I was smart enough to just say yes, not really understanding what those were. But that was a pivotal experience for me, and I learned more in those summers than I did during the academic year. Just listening to the architects talk, like how they spoke to vendors, how they spoke with the city, how they spoke with clients, with each other, and just this whole idea of ideas and that realm that just really fundamentally changed me. And
I'll take this moment to say that we're in the city library that was designed by Rob Quigley, sitting in the corner, hoping that people don't say that we're too loud.
And toss us out. Yeah. We know Rob. We'll drop that card. But so that was really kind of how I experienced architecture for the first time. It was a slow boil. It wasn't an aha moment. It was just this revelation, like, this is meaningful to me. It makes me excited, and it would be fun to pursue. And then I was surrounded by people that encouraged me and invested in me. So that was that's a long answer to your short question.
No. What are your 3 classic buildings that you like, and why? And they don't have to be classical, just classic as
right.
Yeah.
So this is interesting to think about, because buildings for me are so much about placemaking, and it's really about experiences. So I've been in buildings that have just visually blown me away, but the ones that are most memorable to me are the ones where I have really fond memories of. And so they're not necessarily extraordinary, but to me they are, and for that reason. And so this is crazy, but I have a family that live in the Bay Area. My sister's family lives there, and 2 sisters actually. And every time I'm in the city, I was just there a week ago with my son doing the classic college trip up the coast, and we watched some baseball games the way he's going to be a senior this year in high school, Sebastian. And every time I'm in the city, I visit St. Mary's Cathedral by Pier Luigi Nervi.
Yes.
And I don't know what it is about that space, but it just moves me. It's so the hyperbolic paraboloids on the exterior
Yeah.
are quite simple, the way it's rendered, but the way the light moves on it. But you go inside and it's this really heavy concrete structure with these concrete forms that come down these heavy corners, and it lightens as it goes up, and then has this extraordinary stained glass on the east, west, and north, south directions, and then this incredible sculpture of metal that hangs down in the middle, and just the smallest wisp of wind makes it move, and then the corners open up to the views, and so you can look across the entire city, and it's just a building. It makes me feel something, and I don't know why. It's not as ornate as the European cathedrals, or it's not as big or whatever, but it just,
I don't think it really has to be, but
every time I'm in the city, it's like a friend. I stop by, and so Sebastian and I went, and it was the first time I'd taken him there, and we were just there for 15 minutes. We walked around, and then we left, and so that would be one of them.
I haven't been there in years. No, I have to go again. I haven't been to San Francisco really, just hanging out for at least like 3 years or whatever. Right.
And the cathedral, the new one in Oakland by SOM, the Cathedral of Christ the Light, is just the opposite. It's it's all glass. And they have this scrim that's perforated that shows the image of Jesus.
I've
from
seen
the rose window
because of the timber in there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I forget.
You can walk underneath, and the
Yeah.
crypt is underneath, and the altar's on this piece of glass that you can just see shadows through. It's opaque glass, but again, those are two buildings I always go and visit when I'm in town, and even if it's just for 15 minutes, it somehow is it's rejuvenating for me, and it just, they feel like old friends, you know. And then the Disney concert hall by Gary, I look at that, and it is the most extraordinary structure, that probably the really first new architecture that's been done in hundreds of years. And that was because of technology and the computer and the software. But it is just unbelievable the way it changes with the light, and if it's a sunset, or it's just so otherworldly. That I could never come up with that idea. It just blows my mind, really, how unique it is, and how sinuous it is, and how it really relates to the program of making music. And it's extraordinary. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it totally does. In fact, and it's so funny because, right, like my kids, like their dad is also an architect. So it's like they're totally, it's like there's all of it, they'll recognize different buildings. And so my daughter is going to school up in LA a few days a week. And so she took a picture last week, and she sent it in the group text, and she was like, oh, she said, look at what, look at this, and then, of course, one of the other kids was like, oh, how cool. And then she's like, oh, do you remember when we saw it when we were little? And so it was like they totally could remember that from when they were younger. I mean, because we probably went to it 10 or 15 years ago, probably, when we went up there to see it one time, and went up through the gardens and everything. It's pretty memorable. And I mean, we used to live down the street from the Binoculars and all these other Gary buildings. We were in Venice Beach for 10 years.
Right.
So,
KdA,
so the youngest one wasn't born yet, but the other two were. And
I had just even La Sagrada Familia would be probably the other one.
Which is funny. A lot of people have been saying Sagrada Familia lately. I mean, I think that it kind of goes in these. There's something in the air or whatever, as far as what people talk about during the interviews. And the person that I interviewed earlier today was kind of talking about some of the other things where he was raised with an architect in his family, but he said that he wasn't even aware that really was an architect. And his relative had a home in Scottsdale that had been designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and lived in it. And he used to go to it and like say, wow, this is a really cool house. But as a kid, like he said, I don't think anybody ever said, oh, this house was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright or anything. It was just kind of like, oh, this is just the way it is, you know. And, yeah.
I had one more experience, and back to this idea about buildings as memory. One part of the college trip, my son and I stopped by UC Berkeley, and we were just walking through campus, and Strawberry Creek comes right through, and there's the faculty club was designed by Bernard Maybeck.
Yes.
Very small but clubby. A building, and I was allowed 1 year out of residency when I was at University of Arizona, and I studied with Syracuse University in Florence. And then I went to UC Berkeley for 1 semester just on a fluke. I applied and they said, "You're not one of our sister schools, Arizona, really?" You know, and then it turns out the person who was doing admissions was going on maternity leave, and she's like, "What the heck? Just come." So I got there. They weren't expecting me. And I needed to stay in sync with my classes to graduate on time. And so I needed a profession and practice class. And it was full. And it was taught by this professor named Sam Davis, a really amazing guy. And I went and told him what my situation is. He's like, "Sure, you know, we'll take you." You know, and so did the class, and he had this deal: if you got an A in the class, he would take you to lunch at the faculty club. And so I was so motivated. I was not a very good student, but I was motivated to do that lunch with Sam at the faculty club, and I did it. And he took 4 or 5 of us to the faculty club, and it was like the most memorable experience from college. Just walking in there with him, sitting down, the white linen tables, and just Bernard Maybeck was someone who I really got to know and appreciated his architecture and his person. And so you know, to walk through it, there was a wedding that was going on at the time, and it was all set up, flowers everywhere and lights, and my son and I went, and they said, "Oh, come on in." And we walked through, and it was just it was that flood of memories. It was it's a simple building. It's not especially complicated or large or whatever, but it just was such a visceral memory for me. And so I'm like, wow, this is great. It was like a time machine. It took me back to, you know, that class with Sam Davis. So it was fun just to share that experience. So those are some of my favorite, but they change every week. I mean, there's so many amazing buildings that are done for different reasons, different times, different budgets, different purposes. But I like the way that you phrase the question is, you know, which ones are, you know, kind of meaningful to you rather than the best, because, you know, what does that mean?
Exactly. What are you, So, what do you like about being an architect?
That's a terrific question. And my answer is probably just the same as everybody else's.
No, everybody's different. It's funny. They're the same 4 questions, and then like for some of the different things, I might like add an additional. And then for, you know, you have the fellowship question, I think. Did you get the fellowship question? I guess I forgot that you were a fellow. There's also the fellow. Just why did you apply, and in what subject did you do? But they're all people's answers are all different.
Well, it's a great thing about this test. There's no wrong answer, so and self-graded. So I'm going to get a smiley face on the top and a gold star. But what do I like? Thank you. There it is. Good. What do I like most about being an architect? There's a lot of things, actually. I think the first one is just that I can make a living dreaming. You know, it's I don't think I do very well in a kind of office cubicle, grinding it out 8 to 5. I think kind of my ADHD personality would just wither and die. So this idea that all buildings are exactly the same but completely different in that they have front doors, they have windows, they have roofs, they have bathrooms, but the meaning that clients bring to them, their use, the budgets, the sites are all fairly unique, and so the projects are very, very similar but completely different. And I like that aspect of it. When you complete a project, you work yourself into unemployment, and you got to hustle and find the next one, and then start the process all over again. And So I think that act of dreaming is very much aligns with my just ability to daydream and wander and think about things. And then the act of creation is so powerful. I mean, it's the way the Bible starts off, in Genesis, and then we have 4 children, and just experiencing what my wife did, growing a human and bringing it into the world. It was just mind blowing, and I probably don't give her enough credit or tell her often enough, like, how amazing that really is. And all mothers, like, just how transformative it is, and how incredible it is to dream, to labor, and then to have this experience of this incredible life, like you're looking at and you're like, we made this, and so architecture is a little bit maybe the male version of that for me, where you have this idea, you collaborate. It's a difficult process. Take stuff out. It's too expensive. The building department, all this stuff. Yeah. And then at the end,
especially the building department,
when it's done and people are in it, it's extraordinary. And probably one of the most profound experiences I had with a building that I worked on was the St. Bartholomew's Chapel. And it was on the Rincon Indian Reservation, which is north of Escondido. You go up the hill to Valley Center and down to Palma Valley. It's at the base of Mount Palomar. It's the headwaters of the San Luis Rey River that drops into Oceanside Harbor. And there was an estancia, a small mission. Okay. They would set up the mission wherever they set up, and then they went upstream and created these little estancias or submissions along the way. Okay. And this was at kind of the headwaters. And when the big fire came through in 2004 and then again in 2007, it burned a lot of the reservation. And so it's the only time I've ever ambulance chased. There was this incredible photograph in the Union Tribune of this priest who actually knew, his name was Father Juregi, celebrating Mass out in front of the little chapel that burned. It was a small 800 square foot chapel. And the parishioners, there maybe was 15 or 20 of them, had brought their lawn chairs and were sitting out in front. And in the back were about 15 or 20 CAL FIRE guys with their trucks there. And you could still see the hazy air. And they were celebrating Mass, like, after it burned. And it really struck me as, like, how powerful buildings are in a community and bringing them together, even in times of great loss. That they speak to the community and their relevance and their ability to really bring people together, coalesce and figure things out and move forward. And so I called Father Drake and said, "Hey, I'll help you rebuild the chapel pro bono." And so he said they'd just done a couple $100,000 remodel. They put air conditioning in and painted and put some lights in the parking lot. So the committee's all together. Why don't you come up and meet them? It's really up to them. It's their structure because it's on the reservation. So they introduced me, and I went up for several meetings. And the head of the committee was this amazing guy named George Arviso, very tall, maybe 6'4", built like a tree, really solid, and they were all very quiet, and that's not me. And so I was talking, and I'd ask questions, and they wouldn't respond, and I would have, it felt like being on a bad date, because I was like, should I repeat the question? I was thinking this in my head. No, don't do that, because then they'll think that you think that they're dumb. Or like, should I answer my own question? No, because you need their answer. And I was just having this whole conversation in my head because they wouldn't give me any feedback. And
but it was cultural.
It was cultural, because I wasn't one of them. And their traditions are sacred to them, and it was kind of the keys to the kingdom, and you don't share that. And I kept begging him, like, I cannot do the building you need unless you share. And they just hadn't gotten to the point where they trusted me. And so about the third or fourth meeting, I was saying, well, would you like to do something sustainable? And George put his arm on my shoulder and he said, Kevin, we've been living sustainable on this land for 7,000 years. And he got this wry little smile, and we both started cracking up. Like, and this is another experience that fundamentally changed me, not only as an architect, but as a person. And like, I needed to be much more humble. I needed to be a much better listener. I needed to settle down and really just listen. And his wife started making lunches for the group. There was like 4 or 5 of them, and 1 or 2 from my office and the contractor. And we started having these 3-hour-long meetings. We'd have a design meeting for about an hour. We'd have lunch for about 45 minutes, and George's wife would make lunch for us all. And she'd put in those little styrofoam packet containers with the smiley face that says "Have a nice day" with the compartments. And she'd do a dessert and a chili or a sandwich. It was really great. And we started to get to know each other and breaking bread.
Yes.
You know? And then it turned into this phenomenal experience. They really opened up, and we ended up building the building largely out of site-found materials. We did ram dirt, so we used 180 tons of site-harvested dirt. For the baptismal font, we went and harvested a 5-ton boulder, and we cut off the top and the bottom like a hard-boiled egg and polished it. And the altar was made out of an oak tree that was donated by a neighboring tribe, and that had all sorts of symbolism because oaks produced the acorns, and that was a physical sustenance.
Of course.
But the altar is kind of spiritual sustenance through communion.
They would ground them in the
the metate. And the baptismal font looked like a metate, like, you know, and so it turned out to be this really life-changing experience. So back to the question about why I like being an architect. They invited me very deeply into their lives, and I learned several things from them, just personally and professionally, and I came out of that experience changed. And so I think that's what I find also so beautiful about the experience is at the level that I practice it. That I'm able to really connect with people and be shaped by the experience. And so it's in many ways satisfies or satiates a curiosity that I have about the world. And, and that goes back to my parents too. They were deeply curious people. And we had this whole wall of National Geographics, you know, when they would come every other month, they would go up there and they have a map in it, and there would be some exotic place in the world, and where they were doing these exhibits.
The newer ones had a map. The older ones did not have the maps in them.
And so for me, it was like it just opens up this whole new world. And so discovery is very exciting for me. So I think to bring it back to the beginning, I think it is this idea of just really being able to dream and have these amazing collaborations with clients, and also my collaborators on the design side. I work with a really amazing group of consultants and architects that when we work together, it creates a secret sauce that the whole is way more than the sum of its parts. And so
Christy was talking about curiosity too, as far as like being one of the things that kind of, I mean, I think we all have to be curious, and then that kind of drives us to like look outward, but then inward, and then create.
And every single project, like the little public restroom on the sand in Ocean Beach, was it was 1,200 square feet. It was tiny, but it really became an exercise on giving something to the community that reflected their values. And then we were contracted for 4 public meetings, and we had 24. So not only with the neighborhood and the planning group, but also with like the police department and park and recs, and you know the neighborhood would say, we really want to have showers because a lot of families come here that they want to shower off their kids before they go home. But there's all these vehicles that park in the parking lot permanently, and when parents strip their kids down to shower them, like there was issues there. So they said, can you put up a wall? So we put up a wall, and then the police department said, no, you can't do that because people hide behind that wall at night. And then so we went back and forth, and so we ended up with this wall that was sloping and it was curved so that you could not sleep on it. You couldn't, and then the bottom was open, so it had little legs that it stood on, so you could see if someone was up behind it, you know. And so it was just this whole process of really trying to figure out what they want and working our best to give it to them in a creative way. And so this comes back to that whole idea of just you really have to listen. You have to listen. You have to listen. And I think the best architects are able to do that, and that's something that I've strived to is listening.
So the other one was the fellowship question, which why did you apply for fellowship and what topic did you? Right? Do they call them topics? Yeah. Okay.
So it was kind of a fluke.
Besides, I know that you have to be nominated and things like that. But yeah.
So the chapter,
which is not part of what I'm going to do
Right.
in my life. But yeah. But
the executive director of the chapter in San Diego, his name was Bastian. He reached out and said, "Would you consider applying for fellowship?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm young."
How old were you when you applied?
In my 40s.
Okay.
And I don't have a very large portfolio of buildings, and they're small. Like this little chapel and this little public restroom and some houses, and he said, "Well, just give it a go, and we have a really wonderful mentor that will guide you through the process. His name is David Noon."
Yes,
FAIA.
Yeah.
And he has a whole process, and he said he'll guide you through the steps, and he has designed the process so that there's check-in points at major milestones so that you don't fall behind, because it takes a lot of work to document. And so I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." And he said, "You won't make it your first time, and you probably won't make it your second time. So that's pretty typical. So don't be dejected." And the point is, you submit, and then they tell you where you need to strengthen your application,
Yes.
and you develop it.
Yes.
And so I worked with David, and as is my MO, I fell behind, and he would call and say, "Hey, like, I don't know if you're going to make it, like, because you're falling behind the steps." But,
Yeah.
And it was completely advisory and really set up just for my benefit, or the applicant's benefit. So I said, "Well, I'll stick with it. I have a gap of time, and I'll catch up." And
Yeah.
so it was a difficult process, because you have to
told
go
me
all the way back in the archives and try and document things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and my
It was
project-
enough just for me to do that, to apply to get my my license in
Yeah.
Arizona. That's enough of digging deep into my background, realizing that two of the people that had signed off on my hours before, when I got licensed 29 years ago, were actually had passed away. So then I had to get people that knew that I worked for them, or that knew that I was in the office with them, to like sign off on the hours. And so that was enough going back into my back. But and so what was the topic?
Design.
Design.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, my portfolio was not that deep, and I always assumed it was like something you did at the end of your career, and so I just kept going, and I submitted, and again, I had a lot of people that really stepped up and helped with my letter of recommendation. So going all the way back to how I got into architecture, Rob Quigley wrote me a letter of recommendation.
That's great. Yeah.
And he's been a mentor my entire career, and he's just such an open, generous person. Gordon Carrier, landscape architect Leslie Ryan, all wrote really beautiful letters of recommendation that I think snowed the committee into thinking that this was a legitimate application. And I got the letter saying, "Hey, you've been elevated."
So did you get it the first time then?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Okay. There. Okay, and then what do you want to say about the future of architecture? And then we'll do the inspiration question for today. So what do you want to say about the future of architecture, Kevin?
Wow, I mean, that's such a broad and open-ended question, and I don't really know exactly how to respond. There's things that are amazing that have happened in my career. In terms of technology, I think is the first one. When I graduated from architecture school in '92, the office had a fax, and I thought that was like I discovered how to make fire. Like, you could put a picture in this side, and you can send it anywhere in the world, and it comes out the other side.
Do you know when I actually saw a first fax? Because my stepdad is a design engineer, and he designs printing presses, or he did so he designed like these big printing presses, like from the LA Times. Like, he helped design the printing press for the USA Today, which was the first color press, and we were at his place. We were probably in the 6th or 7th grade. And we went into his office, which he worked in this big place in Pittsburgh. He worked in the big, and they had a Xerox machine. And then they had this thing that he was like, oh yeah, this is a fax machine. And the thing like had a huge drum on it. And we were like, my brother and I were like, yeah, whatever, whatever that is. It's like, who cares about that? We were making, we were like pressing our hands and our face into the Xerox machine to like
just because you can.
He also came home from one of the conferences one time, and he had like this. He goes, see what this is? And I'm like, what is that? And with his first calculator, a Texas Instrument, like when you were still, I think it was like $500. Now that same calculator is probably worth like $5 or something like that. Is the technology. Am I right? We've got like more on this phone right here. And he had, this thing, and he's like, see? And then he held it up to the light, and he likes it. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, it's an LED. And I'm like, like, what does that mean, right? And, he goes, look, see, it can bend light,
Right.
And I was like, and bend like bends all the time.
Yeah, right.
It just didn't, or that it had any technology that was using, for computers or anything. So my stepdad actually knew CAD before and way better than I ever did, So that's the deal with technology and me. And I'm still like using a pencil to hand draft. And my stepdad like did CAD like 30 plus years ago or whatever for all of his stuff. Yeah. So what's your technology story about the future?
Well, you can almost, it's like sediment of when people graduate, like people that are a few years older than me still hand draw because they got pushed up into middle management and weren't doing drafting, so it didn't make sense for them. And it's another language, AutoCAD, especially when it first came out, it was all the DOS commands. So
I learned on version 0 or version 1, which was horrible. I mean, it was like the third year of architecture school, and I was like, oh my god! And I could draft so well and so fast. It just like didn't. But it was one of those things that people that did like take off with it, who were horrible designers in school were able to like never get laid off or fired after they graduated, and now head up these architecture firms in downtown San Diego. So there is something to be said for technology and learning it.
Well, my generation was all AutoCAD, and then the next generation now is all Revit. So people drew with a T-square and a triangle for 500 years since Renaissance, back to Leonardo da Vinci. And then my generation comes out and you go on AutoCAD doing 2D, and that lasted for 20 years, and now it's 3D Revit, and
I just, or any of the BIM software.
And so for me to go back and learn that software, it's not really where I am, but it's the future. And so I think a lot about, how technology is changing architecture. But going along this thread, really what's remarkable is the 3D visualization. And one of my deepest collaborations is with another architect named Manish Desai. He lives up in LA, and his wife, Emily, both amazing designers. And he's done all the visualization.
Oh, okay, the rendering for you.
And it's such an important design tool. Like immediately, like once I get the floor plan done, he'll elevate it, and we just start manipulating it, and we get all these ideas and go back and forth. And why I think it's so amazing from my perspective is that when you showed 2D drawings to clients, they didn't mean anything to them. It's not how they see the world. It's a language they don't speak. Where the renderings, they can see it exactly, the light, the quality of materials, the space, the shadows, how it all works. So the collaborations are much more meaningful because they can understand. I had, one of my first clients where I hand drew it. When it was all done, we walked through it and they're like, oh, this is what it looks like. And it just struck me like, oh my gosh, we've been working on this for a year and a half. And you're just now like, you've just now got the vision. And that was a really important message to me. Like, just because I understand it doesn't mean the people that are going to use it do.
No, but then I've also found that even people doing a fly through or something, that clients don't understand the space until it's actually built and they're standing in it. They're just not. I mean, with us, right? And then it's funny, I mean, sometimes even somebody that I did a project with, he was in architectural engineering, so I thought for sure that he would have some type of spatial perception. And he was like, "Oh, it's amazing that they'll." That we can see it in our heads, right? But then other people maybe don't see it as much, right? So it's like if somebody says like, "Oh, it's different than what I thought it was going to be as far as the paper," and then for us, it's like, "Oh, it's exactly the way it looks in my head,"
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, I knew what it looked like all along, but yeah, I mean, it definitely does help them with, I mean, the other thing is the kind of like the cost for renderings and things, for a lot of people, they're, like, "Oh, can you do a rendering for me for like a small addition or remodel or something?" And you're like, "Well, yeah, we can get somebody to do that. We're going to have to pay them to do that." But
Yeah, for me, it's really deepened the collaboration with clients, and I'm a firm believer that clients know exactly the building that they want. And it's a little bit like the telephone game when you sit in a circle and you whisper.
Oh yeah,
They can close their eyes. They can feel it. Buildings are sensual, right? They smell the way that the quality of the light comes through, the tactile, all those things, and so they have to somehow put it in words that they don't use and communicate it to you, Michelle, as the architect. And then you've got to do the drawings that somehow communicate it to the building department that it's safe and meets all the codes, and the contractor that they can bid it and build it. And then the sub-trades that are on the project that sometimes don't know how to read blueprints that well.
Yes.
And
or they're not looking at them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's an amazing, all these different levels of communication as you whisper in these ears.
Yes.
It's remarkable
Yes.
if you end up with something that's like the original client's dream bubble, having gone through all these translations, and so I find that technology in many ways is super helpful for that. On the other side, with remote work and things, that I don't know if I could do that in this climate. Like when I was in an office, I would bug the guy next to me, Tim Stevens, every 5 seconds, like, "Tim, how do you do this?" And he could still do his work and answer my question without being fully interrupted. But if you're working remotely and you're texting or calling someone all the time, our profession is so much based on mentorship. And I feel like this hybrid work environment and online, where people aren't even co-located. I don't know how that tradition works, where experienced, seasoned veterans are passing on their information and experience to the up-and-comers.
And I've only done it with people that actually have their own offices, and so they're drafting stuff for me, but they have their own offices.
Yes.
So it's like they're
already trained.
And even then, there's still like some like, "Whoa, wait a second, what's this?" I mean, there's still like the communication. I mean, I think that the best thing is that like when I after I first gave birth and I was like doing consulting work for people, I would meet with them, in person and go over things, and then, and then do my work, at my house, while I was taking care of my child. And so, and nursing at the same time as I was drafting. But yeah, there's definitely, there's a thing like I realize I point a lot. I must point when I'm like doing things and, kind of going like this or, and that's lost in translation in an email or even a phone call or anything. So there definitely has to be a lot of communication, even if there's a Zoom call where you're kind of back and forth, like looking at stuff. But even that, I mean, I've like tried to do that, but it's difficult. It's difficult to try to like be on the same page with everybody when you're even. I mean, I guess the whiteboard is like kind of a little bit better than just trying to like zoom and draw things. And here, look at that. But
Well, so much of our profession, really in life, is communication. Like the most successful people I've ever met in my life, and not financially, just at life, are really good communicators. And, my dad, this was a funny story. Can I go on a tangent?
Yeah, you can go on
Okay.
a tangent as long as you can come up with inspiration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my dad never wore jewelry or a watch or anything, and he hated the mall. He'd go to the mall like twice a year at Christmas and
Yeah.
under duress
Yeah.
getting something for my
Yeah.
mom. And so one day I was maybe 10 or 11, and he said, "Will you come do errands with me?" And we were stopping by the mall to pick up something, and he would always get me a treat. He loved Orange Julius. There was an Orange Julius in the mall. And so I was going to meet a friend later that day. And so we were doing our errands, and I asked my dad what time it was. And he kind of looked at me like, "Why would you ask me that? You know I don't wear a watch, you know?" And we're in the middle of the mall, you know, in Escondido. And he said, "Just go ask that lady over there." And I looked at him like, "Why would I do that? Like, I don't know her." And he's like, "Well, I don't know her either." And he's like, and I said, "You go ask her." And he's like, "Why would I do that? I don't want to know what time it is. You do." And so he's like, "Just go over and ask." And I'm like, "No, like that lady's, you know, no." And so he said, this is one of the few lessons that were so direct but so profound. He said, "Kevin, you can't be afraid of people. You're going to be around them your entire life. You're going to be married to them. You're going to make them. You're going to work with them. You're going to play with them. You're going to do all these things, you know, and you just have to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And if you tell people what you need, 95% of the time people will help you get what you need, but they can't read your mind.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
And if you don't tell them, you'll be frustrated. You know, if you need directions, people oftentimes will go, "Here, follow me. I'll take you there." Or, you know, "I need a quarter to make a, you know, call," back then when you had a payphone, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there are some people that will help people.
Most people
I mean,
will.
Yeah, most people will, unless you're married to them. But
Wow.
you know,
That's another podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But that whole idea of communication, like, you know, it's really something that I've thought a lot about. And in what you do as a professional, you're communicating with your clients all the time.
Yes.
You know, and like, I know that this is what you like, but you can't afford that. And so let's try this. This gets us closer to what you want, maybe not all the way. And so it's this experience. So, you know, communication is so important to what we do. And I feel like that's one of those soft skills that I learned at Rob Quigley's office. Just listen, it was an open office, so I could hear all the phone conversations.
Yes.
And that's what I learned from is eavesdropping.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, no, that's
And
definitely what you learn from an officer, or like what not to do, or there's things that I like won't do because of some mistake that somebody I worked for did, you know, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that, you know,
So with the technology side, with the remote work, it's so easy now where you can work out of your bedroom, and, you know, it's anywhere in New Zealand, and it's just as if you're next door. But I do feel a little bit fearful of what that means for the profession, about this transfer of knowledge. The other two,
just for people in general. I mean, people need to be around people.
I do.
Yeah.
The other two things I think about too, in terms of, you know, the future of architecture, I think that we need to just be much more assertive about is climate change. You know, like, it's happening, and buildings consume more natural resources and energy than really anything else on the planet, besides maybe war. And so, you know, regardless of how you think climate change is happening, it is happening. And there's things that we can do to live with our environment in a less toxic way, in a more sustainable way, in a way that is healthier. And so I think as a profession, we need to be much more assertive and in front of that discussion, and less passive. And saying, "Would you like this?" Or, you know, I just here in San Diego, water is a huge thing because all of our water is imported, and that will really determine how we're able to grow, and if we're able to grow. And you know, our snowpack was something like 13% of normal this year, and that has impacts in the Central Valley, the food basket, and all these different things. So I think how we live with the environment is, with 7.2 billion people, and soon will be 8 billion people, you know, is something that I think as a profession, we just need to be much more aggressive and assertive and leading those discussions. The other thing I think is just egalitarianism. You know, there's a lot of issues with inclusion on different levels, gender and race. And I think that the design profession for many different reasons, is catered maybe too exclusively to the elite. And I think that good design is transformative, and I think it's something that should be in every neighborhood, in every community, regardless
Absolutely.
of wealth and socioeconomics, and in terms of rec centers and libraries, and not going to the lowest common denominator, but doing civic buildings that are worthy of the public investment, being a good steward, parks and open space, and on every level. I think that our profession really needs to get out of certain neighborhoods. No, I take that back. Not out of, but we need to get into other neighborhoods.
Yes, exactly.
In a much more meaningful way.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that I think a lot about in terms of the future of the profession. I'm an optimist, and I really
Of
believe,
course. I think we have to be, right?
I believe in the next generation that they can solve some of today's problems in the near future, tomorrow, and we're a resilient species, and so I'm definitely hopeful. But there's a lot to think about, and
Definitely. Yeah. We have to pass on a world that our kids will want to live in or can live in.
yeah.
So what inspires you, and what is your inspiration for your architecture? As far as the inspiration question, which is part of the San Diego Design Week
Right.
topic.
And probably touched on a bunch of the previous questions.
Oh,
I think like a really deep curiosity about things is an inspiration for me. I really like research. So the first time I do a building type, I have a lot of fear because I know I don't know how to do it, and so I'm very aware, like hypersensitive. I did a school for children with severe autism, and it was extraordinary. I didn't have any experience doing that, but the client was incredibly open, engaged in the process, and we collaborated to do something that I was really proud of and that worked well for them. And, you know, doing a public restroom or doing academic buildings at UCSD or this little chapel. I'd never done any of those buildings before, so the inspiration in part was drawn from the client trusting me with their future, their dreams, and their pile of money. Because at the end, the pile of money's gone, and if they don't love, you know, what was produced, it's a fail. And so, so I draw a lot of inspiration also, I think, from that trust that's developed between myself and the client, and also, as I said earlier, collaborators. I've just had so many amazing people that have jumped on these buildings, lighting designers and structural engineers and civil and landscape, long-term relationships with landscape architects and Manish and Emily, and that we somehow can understand and create something that's thoughtful and a good use of the resources that used to create them. There was this funny story I heard. It was a cooking show, and the interviewer was interviewing Jacques Pepin. He's a famous French chef.
I do.
And they were talking about...
and he used to be on with Julia Childs.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And he was talking about making rabbit stew, and they said, "Oh, do you feel bad about, the rabbit?" And he's like, "No, that's kind of its purpose." But he said, "I do feel an obligation to make the best rabbit stew possible." And that, it went into creating something worthy. And so I think about that, this pile of wood and metal and concrete. You can use it to create something average and thoughtless, or something really divine. Like this building here, walking in the lobby, it's just like, wow, this is incredible, And so I think the team process is definitely something that inspires me in a big way, in these collaborations. And then I'd say I'm inspired by really literally everything. When I get a new project, I usually get kind of an initial vibe about which way to go, but I'm not really quite sure. And then I just start seeing things. When I was doing the children's workshop, the School for Children with Severe Autism, I was up in the Bay Area visiting my sister. I was taking the train over to Oakland to go visit the Cathedral of Christ the Light, and I just saw these zigzagged roofs in Oakland of these warehouse buildings, and it became, and like immediately I saw the little huts, the teaching huts that we installed in the classroom, because they don't teach 1 on 20, it's 1 on 1 or 1 on 2.
Yes.
And because sensory
They don't want
overload
sensory,
is too
no.
much.
Yes,
Exactly. So
yeah.
we created these like little huts.
Yeah.
And it just on the BART going across, I just saw this, and all of a sudden it just made sense to me, like this little connection to this school that was in a renovated strip mall in Miramar. And so my mind is really, once it gets on a problem, is trying to subconsciously solve it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
So my process is not linear. It's
No,
very much
no.
over here and then back over here and back over here. And ultimately, I try and cycle through as many ideas as I can. It gives me assurances that the one that we ultimately picked was the best of the bunch.
Yeah.
But if I feel like I come to the solution right away, then I feel like I've cheated the process, and there really is a better idea out there. I always believe there's a better idea.
Well, there always has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's even when the client comes back and like, well, I really want this, and it's like, okay, because I mean, right? It's not about us,
Yes.
right? It's about our clients.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, as much as I would like to design
Yeah.
everything, it does end up coming out a better project if there is that other outside influence, and so then we can help them design a better project between the whole group process. But there's definitely, it's not a linear process, and I think probably when we are explaining that to clients, as far as what the process is going to look like, sometimes we have to just sit on it and let it ferment. I was like saying to Christy that like sometimes we have to get a lot of this external stimuli, and then we have our own internal feelings and emotions and memory process, and then we're creating something after, but first it has to ferment a while, and then we can produce something.
Yeah, no, I think it's true. And one of the other really big lessons I took away from Rob's office was, you really design until the last coat of paint goes on. If you see another better idea and you can work it in, the goal is not to stop when you get the building permit. It's if you can.
Well, sometimes you just can't. I mean,
Yes.
especially in an addition remodel with existing thing, like we're like, oh, okay, guess what? This is going to have to, how is this going to go? Or the
Sure.
client now says, but I wanted marble for this bathroom.
Yes.
And, and they want like 4 different, I like all of them. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to coordinate? And then, and then even working with the contractor,
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, I said, there are some contractors that, or sometimes they like jump the gun and decide to come up with their own design.
Yes, yeah.
their own
freestyle.
design solution where you're like, what? Why did you not ask about this? But then other times, it's, he's like, hey, now he's used to working with me a lot. So he's like saying, hey, what if we use, this type of tile for to finish off this edge, because there's going to be an edge here, and we're totally against using a certain metal product, even though they are in Canada, and I still want to go on their trip over there, but which I won't mention their name. But he always is about using different pieces of tile in order to finish things off. So everything has to be finished off. And then on this one edge, which my client just said, she's like, what are we going to do with this? And I said, I know. He wants to do, we want to have like a strip of marble. So we're going to have to get a strip of marble for these 2 edges, because it's going to be finished the best this way, but meanwhile it's just like still open on the top, and the client is like, why is it still open on the top and everything else is finished? I said, because we have to go get the marble for that strip. Yeah. So okay. So anything else that inspires you, Kevin?
Well, I'm
Just
sure.
being in this.
As soon as you hit stop record, I'll think of all sorts of amazing answers. But But I think
I'll have
that
to put both of the pieces back together again. When it like stops in the middle, I have to get somebody to like stitch them together.
Stitch 'em together.
Yeah, but that's fine.
well, it was really fun to talk to you about some of these
Thank
things
you
and
so
share some
much,
ideas.
Kevin.
And
Yeah, no, it was great talking to you too.
it's a fun profession, and it's I hope I never have to get a real job.
This is a real job. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, bye.